Well, hello. It's Romania Black. And today I am juicing up with this gigantic, like pot sized cup of coffee. This is not an optical illusion. This thing holds I've got like 4 cups of coffee in here right now. But yeah, it felt needed because we're on episode 9 of Puella Magi Madoka Magica. And shit's about to go down, I feel. I'm going to have to put this over here. Crap. Shit's about to go down, I feel, because Sayaka may be becoming a witch. Is what seems to be happening. And we've just found out that there's time travel and that Homura is hiding secrets. Madoka may have already become a magical girl in another timeline. She's probably going to become a magical girl in this timeline. What are we going to do about that? Kyubey is an incubator who's creating witches for who knows what. I did read the comments before diving into this episode. Not going to guarantee that's going to happen for episode 10, let me tell you. But I did read the comments before diving into this episode because I just couldn't wait. Luckily, thank you, Geen, for being an amazing moderator. They've been checking comments for me every Wednesday and been like, it's time for Madoka. And I'm like, yes. So I like recording this a couple days before the episode comes out. Mainly because I can't wait. But yes, so I've got a couple comments to talk about before we dive into this, but oh my gosh, I'm just floored at this point, right? So, Pancake pointed out that Kyoko and Sayaka, I compared Kyoko to a character from Attack on Titan a few episodes ago, and they were comparing Sayaka to some other character from Attack on Titan. Those two characters happen to be shipped in Attack on Titan, so I don't know if I hadn't even considered the Kyoko and Sayaka ship. I hadn't thought about that, but I guess. I mean, I don't judge anybody that ships them because red and blue, they're oil and water personalities. They're actually more alike than they seem. I can totally see the ship. It's not personally for me, but I don't judge you if you ship them. Seems legit, right? And then I like the idea that Pancake pointed out of Kyoko and Sayaka. They both kind of mask their selfishness. They basically put up a front of them being selfish when the reality is they are just trying to protect themselves from being hurt. And we've seen through Kyoko kind of the whole thing where she's lost her family because of her wish. That now she's like, I tried to be selfless and help others and saw how that worked out, so now I'm just living for myself. And then you saw Sayaka, who tried to help someone else out and see how that turned out for him. So yeah, I definitely agree with Pancake about the comment about the two of them kind of being similar in that regard. And then Math had an awesome comment over on Patreon, but the big thing that I took away is that Math basically spent part of the comment basically dissecting the 5 girls that we have that are either have been, are, or potentially could become magical girls. So you have Mommy, who had abandonment issues, because we saw that with her being so persuaded to try to have Madoka and Sayaka become magical girls. So Mommy had abandonment issues. Sayaka is her biggest critic, even when she doesn't deserve it. Kyoko isolates herself to living on her own because she's traumatized from attempting to help others. Homura has visibly disassociated herself from her feelings. And then Madoka has self-worth issues. And I thought about that for a hot second, and I know I've brought up Sailor Moon in the past because I grew up with it, but I was like, oh my god, this is basically almost parodying the original Sailor Scouts from Sailor Moon. And I thought about it because you have Mommy, who at the time reminded me of Sailor Venus or Sailor V. You have Mommy, who has abandonment issues. In Sailor Moon, Sailor V is very independent and stays by herself and is totally fine with it and does not have abandonment issues. So I'm like, they're polar opposites. Then you have Amy and Sayaka, who are both, the blue Sailor Scout, the blue magical girl. And Amy is self-sufficient, trusts in herself, believes in herself, knows that she's smart, believes it, and is able to apply it. Sayaka doubts herself all the time and can't apply it at all. And it's like, oh my god, they're totally polar opposites. Then you have Kyoko, and you have Sailor Jupiter, who was called Leah in the English version. But you have Jupiter, who is able to basically help others. She's very much a caregiver. She's very selfless. She's got a lot of brute strength, but she means well to help others with it. Then you have Kyoko, who's the polar opposite. Then you have Homura, and you have Ray, who's Sailor Mars. Homura is disassociating from her feelings entirely. Ray is like one of the most emotional characters in the entire show, so they're polar opposite. And then you have Madoka, who struggles from self-worth, and you have Serena, or Usagi, whose entire thing is that even though she seems like a loser, she has an incredible amount of self-esteem and self-worth when she becomes Sailor Moon. So although I feel like Serena, aka Usagi, and Madoka are very similar, because Sailor Moon in the original series did suffer from a lot of questioning their self-worth, but by becoming a magical girl, a Sailor Scout, she was able to realize her self-worth. Also, spoilers for Sailor Moon, it's been around for 40 years nearly, but Serena, you find this out like in the first episode, that she, has ties to the royal family, or is like a reincarnation of a royal family member from another planet. So if we find out that Madoka is a reincarnation of like something else, I won't be surprised. But also, just like in Sailor Moon, where she gets her self-worth by becoming a magical girl and realizes the power she's had all along inside of her, she's just able to amplify it and use it to an extent. I'm afraid that Madoka is going to be like, well, the only way I can help solve this problem is by becoming a magical girl. And I'm like, why are you selling your soul? So like, and it seems like Homura doesn't want this to happen because stuff has happened in the past that we don't fully know about yet. But I'm like, at this point, I think that Madoka is going to become a magical girl. But if she doesn't, that'd be great. If she doesn't become a magical girl and the whole OP is just a big red herring, or it's referring to an alternate timeline, I am fine with that. But I'm afraid she's going to sell her soul. And Kyubey is going to be like, yes, the biggest soul ever, could be the biggest witch ever. And I'm like, the only thing is, if she becomes a magical girl, she'd better change the rules. She'd better do something to like change the system, crash the system, do something, girl. I'm going to be going back to that giant coffee cup so much, I feel like. Look at what he's done. Look at him. Look at him watching, laughing. I absolutely love this series because the Discord channel, the comments section, this whole series is bonkers in the best way. I don't think I've had this much fun with reacting to a series since Neon Genesis Evangelion. I don't think I've had this much fun reacting to madness as I was with that series, because that series is so similar. It's just madness upon madness that builds, and you're like, what in the world? And I feel like Shaft gets the visual insanity the same way that Anno Studio got with Neon Genesis. I feel like it's just visual insanity, but there is an anchor to it. There is a rhyme and reason. It just mind boggles you when you look at it and you're like, what? So like I said, I have not had as much fun reacting to a series since Neon Genesis as I've had with this one. This one's so much fun. And the thing that sucks about it is it's only 12 episodes in a movie. Hate it. Hate it. But I've had Pancake has pinned a file onto the Discord channel. It's all spoiler tagged, so I can't see it yet, but there's apparently other media with Madoka. I'm going to be very tempted to look at it and see what all there is after I'm done with the movie. I know that there's another movie in the works, thank God, but I usually don't focus about anything with that because I know with anime movies, especially for streaming, it will take forever to get here. So even if it comes out in theaters this year, I'm not going to be able to see it for like another year. But that does make me feel good knowing that there is some Madoka Magica stuff left over. That is exciting to know. So, yay. But my dogs are being ridiculous because I got home, they've had their meal, I've had my meal, they're all at my feet expecting me to play with them. And I'm like, look, guys, I love you, but Kyubey has beckoned that I watch Madoka Magica. So that's where we're at. I get off early, and what do? I'm going to watch Puella Magi Madoka Magica. Yep, that's what we're going to do. So I've talked for nearly 10 minutes. We're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive into episode 9 of this series and see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. What fresh fun can we have today? In the words of Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball Z Abridged, called it. Okay, look, so this episode, on the one hand, yeah, Kyubey basically confirms things I've been talking about the last half a season. Yeah, confirming many things. I'm like, all right, checking this off. But then Kyubey comes out with like a damn 4D chess move that I didn't even think about. And it's that, yeah, Kyubey doesn't want them to defeat the witches. This giant motherload of witches is going to create this massive energy source. And Kyubey has figured out, well, if Kyoko and Homura, oh my god, yeah, Kyubey was listening because it's mentally linked with Kyoko and Madoka, so it was listening, and when Kyoko was like, hey, we need to team up, Homura and I had to team up to battle this giant motherload of witches that's coming, which Kyubey knew kind of already because he showed up at Homura's apartment, but the point is, Kyubey was like, yeah, I could see how if Kyoko, if you and Homura live, you both could battle this giant motherload of witches that's coming up, and you could possibly, make it to where we don't need to have Madoka become a magical girl. So you gotta go. I think it's insane that Kyubey's like, well, we're gonna get rid of her now. Like Kyubey is just doing things. Kyubey doesn't give a shit about any of these girls, doesn't care. Kyubey is operating on a corporate level that is so far removed from humanity. We're going to talk about it, but on the one hand, like, yes, the magical girls become witches. That's the whole point of them, as it turns out. The whole point is for them to become witches. That's been that way from day one. 2, Kyubey does not give a shit about these girls. He's just trying to get the most energy, most bang for his buck. And it's almost more insulting that he's not just like a villain with this grand scheme. No, he's working for like a General Electric motor company that's like, yeah, we gotta get some energy, and you guys are giving us the most bang for our buck. So this is like the best ticket we got. So sorry. And the way he phrases it, I'm like, oh my god, you sleazy little cat demon, no! And yeah, it now makes sense now why he recycles the little grief seed on his back, because it's his way of processing energy. Oh! And so yes, just like we talked about last episode, his goal is to make Madoka a magical girl, because her being an insanely strong magical girl means she'll be an insanely strong witch, which means they'll give them a lot of energy. So he doesn't give a shit about her well-being. He's like, well, just think of your sacrifice for humanity later on. I mean, I guess the thing about it is, you can't believe shit that he says. Because even though he's like, well, one day humans may benefit from it. Well, bullshit, you say that. You don't even know. All this time, everybody's been like, I kind of know from the Discord, everybody's been like, oh, what are you talking about? It's just Kyubey. And I was like, yeah, I kind of know we're all like wink, wink, nudge, nudge about him. But now it's like, no, he is like the worst. And he's the worst because he doesn't give a shit. It's just like, this is just one little iota. I'm like, why don't you... The thing that gets me, though, about Kyubey's whole MO is he talks about the human race reproducing so quickly and there being so many people. He's like, well, it's just kind of like population control. We're using y'all for an energy source. You won't mind sacrificing a couple hundred girls. What does that matter? What difference does that make for you? But it's like, if that's the case, even though Madoka is potentially a large source of energy for him, he could go ahead and make 12 other magical girls that would probably equal how much Madoka has, right? So why is he so focused on Madoka? Unless in an alternate timeline, Madoka possibly could pose a threat to him somehow. I don't know how. They can't kill him. He has all these spares. But for some reason, he is hard-pressed on getting Madoka to become a magical girl. And I'm like, does she have that much energy y'all can use? Or why don't you just go and try to find other magical girls? Why are you so hell-bent on Madoka? Is it just because... He says he doesn't understand human emotions, but I was like, is it just because you can't get what you want? And she's the one magical girl you can't get, so that's the one you're focusing on? Is it that? Are you that greedy, Kyubey? Maybe. Possibly. Oh my god, this episode. Ugh. This episode was heartbreaking, and it took me a bit to process. I was sitting there watching it all go down, and I was like, wait a minute. Kyoko's sacrificing herself because she knows she's gonna die? So she's sacrificing herself so Homura and Madoka can get away? Okay. Wait a minute, they're both dying? Just... My my brain couldn't process. I was like, oh, because I knew Sayaka the moment she became a witch. I was like, they were talking about, oh, well, we'll use the power of friendship and save her. I'm like, bullshit, that ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work. And I kept waiting for Homura to come in and be like, yoink, and kill her and get Kyoko and her out of there. But that's not what happens. And I'm like, so we're going to go back to this episode because I'm like, but why? Why couldn't Homura get them out of there? Why couldn't they? I guess because she was that strong, or because Homura got there when Kyoko was at her wit's end. We're going to go back to this episode, but I was just like, oh my God. I do think something that is really cool here, and I don't know all the words and phrases. I'm sure somebody in the comments will translate all of those as to what they say for the Witch's Lair. I do like the idea that the formation of Sayaka's witch form is not what is when they go back. Like, it's fully formed with the orchestra and everything when they go back, but here it's all developing, and the incorporation of the train tracks from that part of the discussion she had in the last episode with those guys on the train. I was like, it makes me want to go back to all of the other prior witches and look at their designs and like theorize and question what happened to them to make them become witches, and like what was tied to their identity. Like everything seems to be tied to the witch's identity, and this is just fascinating to me. But yeah, and then Sayaka in witch form has this very like Queen of Hearts motif to her, which is interesting. But yeah, at this point, Sayaka's body is not even, like, a thing. It's just a shell, right? And you have all these flags. It looks like 4 different flags of different colors. And there's swords coming out of it. Like, it looks very medieval. It goes with the whole, like, knight angle. And there's the heart. And there's, like, a tree coming out. And there's, like, 3 different sides to it. Oh, it's so wild. Like, the intricate designs of the witches is insane to me, and I think it's so interestingly done. But yeah, and she's like, what is this? What the hell are you? It's like, well, it's a witch. Yeah. And the train wheels coming out is an interesting choice. I was thinking back to Berserk, again, like we talked about, because in Berserk, there's like a villain that tortures people by tying them to wheels. And so if we're going by like a medieval motif, then the idea of torturing heretics on the wheels kind of seemed to go along with the knight medieval motif with Sayaka, but it is what it is. The fact that she uses the train wheels as a form of a weapon is interesting, because I figured she used like musical notes or like something more musically tied, but her despair came from like the train conversation where they talk about her being useless and of no good, and that kind of relates back to that. So then Homura uses, like, the flash grenade that probably came from her dual disc, and she grabs a hold of Kyoko's hand to, like, stop for a second so she can freeze time. And she's like, just do it so I can freeze time and we can get out of here. And yeah, so the dual disc inside of her thing freezes time and allows her to escape. Yep, and so we see the sword, everything. Wow, the witch with the sword in her hand being like Sayaka. That's insane. And then they start running away. And she's like, that was once Sayaka. Yep. She's like, we could kill it here and now. I'm like, you should have just killed it there and then, but you didn't. Instead, they tried to do well for Madoka. And I'm like, they should have just killed her there when it was frozen. I'm so mad. And it's so frustrating because it's like, if they had gotten a hold of Homura before they went in there, again, one of the big lessons of this story is about trust and communication and how teenage girls are often not good at those things. So I was like, if they just got a hold of Homura back before they went in to find Sayaka, which one, Homura would have been like, that isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to turn her back. That's a stupid idea. But they could have at least, tried to face her with Homura's help, but Homura probably would have killed her outright, so what can we do? And then they managed to get out of the realm before it was fully formed. I did want to make note real quick that we have the 2 versions of Madoka. We have the version of her that looks like the adult form of her, and then it's like the magical girl. I don't know what the other version of her is supposed to be. I'm very curious. We still don't know about that. But yeah, all these things of them like doing the schoolyard activities, and then Sayaka with the one guy playing the violin that we know is never going to happen now, and then Kyoko by herself eating the food. I do think it's interesting. I wanted to pause it there with Homura and the umbrellas that are all like monochromatic, and hers is like the lavender one. And then her like running through the rain. Still don't know the whole thing with the cat. Don't understand the thing with the cat. But then we see Homura. Now we see it's Homura and Madoka at the end. Against, yeah, them looking at each other like they're facing off. And is that thing shooting up into the air supposed to be like the witch at the end? What do we get out of this? So, I don't know. I hate the idea of Madoka becoming a magical girl because it's her giving up her very soul and potentially becoming a witch. But if she's as strong as Kyubey keeps telling her that she is there a chance she can do something to change the system? I don't know. But it's like, why would you do that? It's like, you have a family and everything, so I'm just like, damn it. It feels more and more ominous, like she's gonna have to become a magical girl, and Kyubey's forced them into a corner. If you see any type of magical creature that suddenly tries to convince you of anything, the moral of this story is back the hell away and get away from it. Don't listen to it. Be like, nope, we're good. Don't tempt me, you devilish demon cat, and just leave. Don't listen to it. I'm just like, nope. Hell to the no. Hell to the no. So the episode's called There's No Way I'd Allow That. Now, part of the lyrics of the OP is like, no matter what happens next, I won't give in. So I'm like, is she going to become a magical girl or is she not? I do think the bugs on the lampshade forming the skull as Madoka walks back to meet with them is such a terrifying bit of symbolism. Like, how dare they? But yeah, I do like the idea that we show up on these creepy train tracks. There's barbed wire everywhere, and there's darkness and shadows. And when they all meet up, their shadows become X's. Just, the insanity of it all. And the idea of train tracks being here, all like of us crossing the ways. And when they meet, the two train tracks cross, like we're at an impasse. Because it's literally where they're at. They're at an impasse. Like, do they, at this point, do they kill Sayaka? Do they try to save her? Is that even possible? What's Madoka gonna do? The one thing I hate is that Madoka, after all this time, no matter what people tell her, girl has been told time and time again from Homura, from others, being like, you're not a burden, you're not useless, we love you and care about you, don't become a freaking magical girl. And she's like, well, do I become a magical girl? I'm like, everybody's telling you not to! Girl, smell the roses, feel the grass! People are telling you not to become magical girl for a reason. And they're basically saying like, well, I care about you, don't become magical girl. Well, I don't know if I should become magical girl. I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm like, Madoka, do I need to come through that screen and just strangle you? Like, girl, they're telling you not to do it. What more proof do you need? And there's almost this, the one thing about this episode is there's almost this guilt that's associated with happiness. And it's so mind-boggling to me, right? That they're doing the miracles for happiness to become a magical girl, which we know is a terrible idea. But then it's like, is it then a sin to be happy? And it's like, no, because Madoka's like, well, but I just feel like I'm a burden to everybody. And I'm like, well, Homura told you didn't have to be around them. Homura said you could ignore them, but obviously you don't want to do that because they're your friends. So no, you're not a burden. But when she's like, oh, I just feel like I'm a burden to you all and that I'm not doing anything. And Kyoko lays it out. She's like, look, you have a great life. You have no reason to be a magical girl. There's no reason for you to be a magical girl. You have a great life. You have a family that cares about you. You have other friends. Don't sacrifice it. She's like, I literally have none of those things. So that's why I'm a magical girl. Homura doesn't seem to have any of those things. That's why she's a magical girl. She's like, don't make a decision to become a magical girl on a whim. That's what Sayaka did. Like, Sayaka, she didn't have to help Kamijo. She didn't. He would have been okay, I'm sure, eventually. It would have sucked. He would have probably been depressed for a while. But at the end of the day, he may have been able to get over it because right now he seems perfectly fine. But it doesn't seem like he eventually would probably have gotten over the deficit that he was in. But Kyoko's like, she didn't have to help him and sell her soul to help this guy and then end up become miserable over it. She's like, don't sell your soul and then become miserable over it. She's like, that's not the point. I'm glad Kyoko didn't become a witch, because I was afraid of that when we saw her soul gem getting darker and darker, that she was going to become a witch. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But for her just to sacrifice her life. Ugh! But yeah, so basically, and Homura is very blunt. I like Homura a lot. I feel like some people in the comments don't like her, and they've been trying to tell me about her, and I've ignored those comments because I'm like, let me get through the story before I make my final judgment. But I like Homura overall, but I'm always attracted to like dark, mysterious characters. The one thing that is frustrating about Homura is that I get it. She can't talk too much because she's trying not to alter time, even though it's altering time by being there in the first place. But I get why she doesn't want to say too much, but there are times that I'm like, girl, I wish that she would open up. I wish she would try to connect to Madoka. I wish she'd try to be more sentimental. But she has disassociated herself from her emotions, and she's kind of accepted the fact that she's not human. And she's like, yeah, I know I'm not human. I'm just trying to prevent other people from also not becoming human. So she's kind of accepted this robotic fate and is trying to prevent others from also succumbing to the same fate. But the problem is with Homura, by accepting your non-humanness, it's hard to reach humans. So it's like, if she doesn't reach out and doesn't show that humanity, it's hard to reach them, and that's kind of her goal. So it's like, And then she says, well, her soul gem turned into a grief seed and gave birth to a new witch and was no more. And she just bluntly says it. And I like that Kyoko's like, well, damn, girl, you just said it like it was, didn't sugarcoat it at all. And I mean, from a communication standpoint, yeah, that's pretty blunt, but I'm like, these are also teenage girls who take that horribly. And poor Madoka, she's like, her best friend's basically dead. She's like, when these gems darken and cloud over, then we turn into grief seeds and are reborn as witches. That is the inescapable fate of all those who become magical girls. And we finally get to see hers with a little diamond on it. And I like how Kyoko's just kind of like upset about that. You can tell that she's like, well, I like that Kyoko's basically like, well, hell, I ain't gonna become a magical girl. Screw you. And maybe that was part of it. She's like, I'm just gonna go out in a blaze of glory. Then I can't become a magical girl. It's like, if Sayaka's gonna die, I'm gonna die too. It hit me around the time I was looking at the comments, and Pancake was noticing that and commenting about those two characters from Attack on Titan being similar to Sayaka and Kyoko. I was like, oh, I hadn't shipped them before, but now I kind of do. And right when I get to the point where I can ship them and start to really like them as a couple, guess what happens? They both die. It's like, son of a bitch. But why? But why? Oh, it's so frustrating. I love the train going by too. That part was really good about Madoka, like, as the train passes. Imagine you being in that train and you look over and you see these girls holding another girl being like, what the fudge? It's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And like, what are we gonna do? And she's like, well, how could that be? And she's like, Sayaka-chan just wanted to save people. She just wanted to fight. And Homura's like, yeah, she just bore a curse of equal magnitude to her wish. So, let's talk about that. Because Sayaka said this at the beginning, that whatever your wish is, it is going to create a curse that is equal to it. So, basically, whatever, and I'm going to change markers. Whatever the wish that you make is, it's eventually going to curse the same way. That may explain why Kyoko's wish didn't really have, like, I mean, I know it claimed her father and her family, which is traumatic, but her wish was just that people would listen to him. That was it. So it wasn't really like, it makes sense to me why Kyoko wasn't personally affected so much by the curse of the wish, because the wish was just gonna like, listen to him. And that's pretty much it, right? Whereas Sayaka's was like, heal his hand that no one else, because honestly, if you think about it, having people listen to her dad isn't something that was impossible. It just wasn't happening. But it was something that was definitely a possibility. So it wasn't much of a wish. Whereas you know, healing this boy's hand that is not medically possible is a pretty significant wish. So the curse would be very significant in itself, which is terrifying to know, because if Madoka becomes a magical girl and makes this gigantic wish, then the flip effect of that is that the curse will be just as awful, which I'm like, I don't want that. No, thank you. Also, I'm wondering now if in episode 1, Madoka, when she saw Homura battling that giant monster, if that's the Valsprung, whatever its name is, that's coming in a few weeks, if it was like a vision of that yet to come. And we see in that first episode, if that was the alternate timeline and Homura was saved by Madoka by becoming the magical girl, or if it's a premonition of things to come in this series. On the one hand, I don't want Homura to die. On the other hand, I don't want her to lose. But then on the other hand, I don't want Madoka to become a magical girl. And I've resigned myself to the fact that she probably is, and I'm going to be mad about it. But then I'm like, there's like that little part of you that hopes if she becomes a magical girl, maybe there's something she can do to break the system. But as we've seen, Kyubey has lied about nearly everything he's told them. And he's like, oh, we're not capable of lying. I'm like, well, you sure are great at withholding information. And you sure are great at manipulation, sir. He says they can't deceive, but bullshit on that. Bullshit on that. Because he was very deliberate in what he said and didn't say to Kyoko to lead her to going after Sayaka when he knew good and well what it was going to accomplish. Like, oh, that little bastard. How dare he? He's like, she will live to curse as many people as she saved. That's the price you pay for becoming magical girls. And I love the scene where Kyoko grabs Homura and is like, why would you tell her that? Who do you think you are? She's like, why do you think you know it all? And she's like, how can you stay calm? And she's like, well, Sayaka was her best friend. She's like, well, I hope you understand now what it was that you aspired to become. Like, this is the price you pay. She's basically Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python. She's like, I warned you, but no, nobody listens to me. It's just a harmful little bunny rabbit, Kyubey. Just a harmful little cat. Yeah, just a harmless little cat. She's like, I'm always warning them. I want somebody to do the Monty Python Tim the Enchanter monologue and put it over Homura, being like, I always warn them. Nobody listens to me. And she's like, of course I don't know what it's like to be human. I love that she flips her hair and does all these dramatic poses in pure Shaft fashion. And neither can you. Just the whole composition of the X's in the shadows, Homura walking across the tracks that cross, the two of like Sayaka and Madoka in the middle there. Oh, amazing. Now, she made a comment there about them disposing the body and how it was important. And I'm like, is there something that happens if you don't dispose of it properly? I don't know. But the main reason I brought Whiteboard Kun out is because of Kyubey coming in here like a damn nightlight, just shining on here like a creepy mofo. I would not let him in. I'd be like, how dare you, sir? How dare you? And of course my dogs want me to play with them, and that's not going to happen at the moment. But yeah, he's like, oh, can I come in? And it's like, oh, you think? No. And she's like, oh, so you're alive after all. And he just perches up on the little shelf with her toys. Like, of course. Like, of course I'm still alive. Mm-hmm. And she says, was it true? And he's like, well, there was nothing wrong enough to require correction. Everything he says. Ugh. And then she's like, really? She's like, so you've been turning us into magical girls just so we would become witches. And he's like, oh, well, don't misunderstand. We don't do this out of ill will towards mankind. And I'm like, oh, but you don't do it out of freaking goodwill either. I like that we finally understand that Kyubey is an alien. He's an alien life form, and they've come to Earth to turn us into an energy source. He's like, we're doing everything to extend the lifespan of the universe. And he's like, do you know the term entropy? And it's like, we're getting into this. He's like, to give a simple example, the amount of energy released by a bonfire is less than the amount it took to grow the wood that it's made of. So basically what he talks about with entropy, and he uses the firewood as an example, is that we have the bonfire, and the bonfire gives out energy, right? But that energy, and again, we're getting into less than, greater than. I think that's right. I think that's right. It's been a while since I've taken a damn math class. Is less than the energy that it took to grow the trees. So he's like, basically, we're consuming too much energy than we are getting in, is the problem. We're using up more than we are able to grow. It's kind of like, if you don't have enough trees to make oxygen in the world, then it's going to be a problem. He's like, when energy changes form, some of it gets lost. And as a result, the amount of usable energy in the universe is constantly decreasing. So basically, we're using too much energy. And a lot of it is getting lost in the universe. I was like, did you expect to have like a thermodynamics lesson in your Magical Girl anime? I don't think you did. But welcome to Puella Magi Madoka Magica, because here we go. And I like that she's like, you know, barely in high school, and he's trying to ask her to understand thermonuclear dynamics. We searched for a form of energy that's not bound by the laws of thermodynamics. And what we discovered was the energy generated by magical girls. So he's like, we found this great energy source. And it's the idea, get this right on here. We found the idea that the best energy source came from humans, and specifically girls in the second stage of life, or as teens, that we could convert into magical girls. And the magical girls become witches. And then we just harness all of that energy together. And voila! Voila! You know, you magical girls generate a lot of energy. And then she's like, what are you? And he's like, oh, well, our civilization developed technology that can convert the emotions of sentient life forms into energy. So there we go. It's the idea of energy from emotion. So it's almost like they're double dipping. They not only get like the hope from the magical girls as they're killing witches, they also get the despair and the sorrow from the witches. I'm assuming they'll get more from the witches, which is why they want them to eventually become witches. Eventually, if you become a witch and you have all this despair and sad energy, that's the mother load. But if you get some hope on the side, I will take that energy too. We'll convert it either way. We're happy with whatever energy we get from it. Yep. Oh my God. Insanity. And then from there he says, but we don't possess the capacity for emotion. Here's the thing. Whether or not they are capable of understanding emotion, they are smart. And they're smart enough to know strategy. Strategy doesn't have to involve emotion, which includes that idea of deception and manipulation as well. We studied various species across the universe, but we found that mankind was the best source. And then we have all of these chairs, just all the different kinds of chairs. And I don't know if it's supposed to represent like all the different life forms that they got in contact with before they found mankind. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to reference. If it's showing that they searched throughout time and space to find all these different life sources, or if it's just Shaft being like, hey, here's some bizarre imagery to go with this bizarre conversation. Because maybe it's supposed to represent all the different forms of life that they tried to like experiment with first, and then they found mankind. And then we have almost like a color change, like the key color change gets more green. And he's like, well, given your population and reproductive rate, we found that y'all had plenty of emotional energy. It's clear the amount of emotional energy generated by one is greater than the amount expended during its birth and growth. Oh my God. It's just like, just making it scientific, like a clinical use of their souls. Your souls are energy sources capable of defying entropy. Like just, it's insane. Like this clinical science, right? And he's like, and the most effective of all are girls in their second stage of development. Oh my God. Which is who often fluctuate between hope and despair. Hence, the magical girls and the witches. That explains why they didn't target boys. They weren't as effective. They aren't the best battery sources. We wanted to go with the name brand battery, not the generic. The moment your soul gems flare out and turn into grief seeds is a tremendous amount of energy that's produced. And as incubators, it's our job to collect that energy. Oh my God. Insanity. And she's like, so we're just disposable sources of energy to you then, and we should just die for you. And he's like, oh, well, do you have any idea how many civilizations coexist across the universe? You aren't the only ones out here, and how much energy they consume in a single second? They're like, look, we're just in charge of an energy corporation. We didn't ask to make you all die. And it's like, oh my God, right? He's just like, eventually you humans will be able to leave. This is the part that gets me. He's like, eventually you guys will be able to join us and leave this planet. So don't you want the planet, the universe, to have like things for y'all to see? Like, but that could be, you don't know when that's gonna be. He's like, in the long run, this arrangement will benefit you. And Madoka's like, so the reason why my friends and everybody had to die was this hypothetical situation that you don't even know is gonna happen or not? That's why they had to die and suffer? And he's like, well, she's like, well, that isn't right. It's cruel. And I like that as Kyubey on his little chair, like bathed in the light, he's like, but we asked for your consent with the contract. So basically, he's like, well, but we made you sign a legal binding contract. We gave you what you wanted. It's like, basically, if you're sitting upon a mountain of gold and you don't know what you have, and they basically bought the rights to your land to get the gold, but didn't exactly tell you what the land was worth or the gold that was underneath it, and kind of swindled you. That's basically what they did. They're like, well, we got your consent and we made you sign a contract so it's legally binding, but they swindled them. They tricked them. And Madoka tries to call him out on it. He's like, if anything, we've been very accommodating in that respect. He's like, we could have just turned you into magical girls or whatever. And she's like, but you deceived us. And he's like, the act of deception in itself is incomprehensible to us. And I'm like, well, bullshit it is. You've been deceiving everybody this whole time, mother trucker. Oh my God. Why is it that when humans regret a decision based on a misunderstanding, they feel resentment towards the other party? I'm like, because you didn't read the fine print. Oh, and she's like, I don't even follow what you're saying anymore. She's like, you're being ridiculous. I don't accept it at all. And he's like, well, we have a pretty hard time understanding your value system too. I like how Kyubey just spins it back on her, being like, well, your value system's the one messed up, girl. Oh my God. I'm so floored. So floored. He's like, your current population number is over 6.9 billion and grows by 10 every 4 seconds. Which is why I'm amazing that he's still like after her. Like, surely there's not another human. Why do you make such a fuss over the life and death of a few people? And again, here's the one thing. I don't get mad at Kyubey because he doesn't understand human emotions, because he clearly does not understand what a big deal it is for her friends to die. He doesn't understand that, and I get that. But when he's, leaving out details conveniently for his own gain, and he's being deceptive, even though he's like, we don't know what deception is, I'm like, bullshit, you don't. That's the part that I'm like, no way, dude. And she's like, well, if that's how you think, you really are our enemy. And then he's like, oh, and I like that Kyubey just goes, He doesn't really say much to it. Right? He's like, well, despite that, I did come here to try and explain her. He tries to, he tries to gaslight her. He tries to go, oh, well, you may think that I'm the enemy here, but I came here trying to offer an explanation and explain our actions and give you some exposition and backstory. I want you to understand how wonderful your sacrifices are. Uh-huh. But it doesn't look like that'll happen. He's like, well, I guess you just won't. He's trying to just be so passive aggressive. He's like, I guess you're just not going to understand what an appreciative situation this is. So I guess that's not my problem. Right? Ah! And then he does say that, and she's like, of course not. And he's like, someday you will become the greatest of all magical girls. And then he says it, and the most terrible of all witches. And when that happens, I'm sure we'll gain an unprecedented amount of energy. And it's just so defeatist in such a way, because he's like, well, you're going to become a magical girl one day because I've lured you into a corner, and you're going to become a witch one day, and then I'll guess we'll win in the end, and you can just say that you've sacrificed yourself for mankind. Isn't that great? Like, he just has to have the last word. And poor Madoka's like, he's like, so if you ever feel like dying for the sake of the universe, just let me know. I'm like, what the fudge? Oh. I hate it. And all the, again, now her bed is surrounded by all of the chairs, which is kind of like her mom's bed surrounded by all of the chairs. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would really like Madoka to talk to her mom about all of this and what she thinks. That would be really good, but oh, I feel so bad for Madoka. Meanwhile, I like the fact that the way for Kyoko to cope with losing Sayaka is to just buy all the food. Like all the fries, all the pizzas, all the burgers. She buys all this food. Girl's metabolism, I guess because she's a magical girl and her body doesn't change, she like isn't gonna get, you know, any heavier or anything from it, or it's not unhealthy for her to eat all the food. But you can see her soul gem is starting to cloud as well. And Kyubey's like, why are you obsessed with keeping that body fresh? And she's like, mother trucker. We actually get to see her bedroom where she has like she has an exuberant amount of lamps. There's like 3 lamps by her bedside. Why does she need 3 lamps? She has a decent apartment though. And her bed there. And I like that she gets mad at Kyubey. And Kyubey's just like, oh, I don't understand why you're so mad at me. She's like, is there any way to get her soul gem back? And he says, not. He does say, not that I know of. And then she's like, well, but there could be a way that you don't know of. And he's like, as magical girls, your existence already defies established logic. So I wouldn't be surprised no matter what implausible feats you manage to accomplish. He's such a bitch, though. She's like, so you're saying that it's possible? And he's like, well, no one's ever done it before. So I don't know how you'd go about it. Unfortunately, I have no way advising you on the matter. And I'm like, he could have just said, no, there's no way it's going to work. He could have just said that, because then Homura's like, you knew there was no way it was going to work. And he's like, of course not. So he's just forthcoming. I just, son of a bitch. He just wanted her out of the way. That mother trucker. That freaking evil cat. Oh my God. And then he's like, I wouldn't need your advice anyway, as if I'd accept help from you. And Kyubey's like, fine. I guess you don't have to listen to me. The thing is, she gets like the stick that says you win on the popsicle stick and everything. Not that it matters, though. So, is Sayaka's body just gonna rot in Kyoko's room now? What's gonna happen with that? What about that? Oh my God. So, I do feel bad for Hitomi, because Hitomi does not know what's going on. She doesn't know that Sayaka is dead. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know why Madoka's left. She has no clue what's happening. So I do feel a little bit bad for Hitomi, being like, is she gonna be okay? The other thing is, too, I was waiting in this episode for Hitomi to tell Madoka what she said to Kamajo, and we don't find out. So it's like, did she end up asking him out or not? Because she didn't walk to school with him. If they were dating, would they not meet up and walk together? Which leads me to believe that she didn't ask him. What I thought was going to happen is, since Sayaka became a witch, what I thought was going to happen was that Hitomi and Kamajo were going to stumble into Sayaka's lair. Sayaka was going to try to like kill Hitomi, and that was going to lead to Madoka and Kyoko fighting her, which would lead to Homura killing her. That's why I thought it was going to go. That is not what ended up happening at all. So Hitomi, as far as we know, is fine. So anyway, we go to this spot. I do like the idea of you have the unicorn wind chime that has 7 little parts to it, and then you have the mermaid that looks like it has the same ponytail that Kyoko does. And I think it's interesting that the mermaid, the way its tail is, looks like a moon, which is what I thought Sayaka's gem was. So there's a connection there. Also, unicorns are rare, which ties to Madoka being a rare individual, and the horns pointing straight at Madoka in that shot. So it's like, what do we do? Also, if you want to talk about comparisons as well, you have the 3 little fish that are surrounding Kyoko. There's the number 3 that's tied to Sayaka. So yeah, it's all connected there. It's interesting. And so like, can we save her? And she's like, this may sound foolish, but I don't want to give up until we can possibly save her. And I like that they like have this mutual understanding and they come together to be kind of like friends in this moment, which was really nice. But this series does not reward friendship. Not at all. And it's like, it's so frustrating. Because it's like everything that would work in like your typical Sailor Moon story does not work in this one at all. Because then they're like, man, wouldn't it be something if we sliced that grief seed in half and we sliced that witch in half and instead of a grief seed, it was the soul gem that came out and love and courage saved the day. I'm like, well, that would have happened in Sailor Moon, but this is not that story. Not at all. I can't believe we have 3 episodes left and a movie. So we see that the soul gem is starting to turn black, the one that Kyoko has. And she convinces Madoka, she's like, you don't have to come, but I think we could you could lure her out and we might be able to save her. Also, I like that she, instead of shaking hands, she gives her the treat. Again, it reminds me of Murasaki Bara from Kuroko's Basketball, who always eats snacks all the time. I feel like him and Kyoko would get along really well. So anyway, going back to the school, Homura notices that both Sayaka and Madoka are absent. And I like that she's just like, I don't feel good. And they're like, well, somebody should take you to the infirmary. And she's like, bitch, no, I do. She's like Cartman from South Park. She's like, bitch, I do what I want. I'm gonna go home now. So yeah, the thing that kills me though is that I know that Homura is blunt and she's hard to understand, but like, when you're up against witches and you just got done telling Madoka that the only reason you're working with Homura is to face a threat that you can't beat, I don't know. Maybe seeing if she'd help out would be something important, but nope, no communication there. We don't do it. And I know why. I get why she doesn't ask Homura, but it's just so frustrating because if she had asked her to help, it might have turned out differently. So then they finally talk about the Walpurgisnacht, the Valpurgisnacht that's coming to the city, this mother lode of all witches. And they're like, none of us could beat it on our own. So apparently it's one thing they got to beat. So we're going to team up. But now that Madoka knows about the mother lode of all witches that's coming, knows that Homura can't beat it on her own, Homura knows she can't beat it on her own, but she's bound and determined not to let Madoka turn into a witch. What are we going to do with that? It's like, I say I'm going to wait. I say I'm going to wait for the next episode after comments, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. This episode was setting up some shit. I don't know. We only have 3 episodes left. Also, we have the 3 sockets of light there, and we also have 3 sockets of light, and the number 3 has been tied, like with the 3 eyes that the wished version of Sayaka had, which was interesting enough in itself. Interesting. So basically, Kyoko says that the only reason that they were working together, her and Homura, was just out of a mutual interest to stop this giant witch from rampaging the city. I love that we get like little tiny details as we go through the construction site that's leading to where Sayaka's witch is, and it's under the overpass of the train tracks. So like we have the different like overpass. I like that the train track is part of the motif as well. And then we see like the stairs up to the train station. We see the 3 outlets. There is on the little part where the gloves are, there's a little triangle and a heart lollipop that says love, love. And then the soul gem manages to go here being like, this is it. And they undo the door and go inside as she's eating like the different little meatballs. And they're like, well, is it Sayaka or is it another witch? Which is important to establish, because how do they know it's Sayaka? And she says because it's the same energy register that was there the day prior. The same magic patterns are the one from yesterday. It's definitely her. This whole place looks like the OP, which is problematic. And then she goes there, turns into the magical girl, does her little transformation, and throws the chopsticks. And they land in this heart that says, love me do. I I hate that the heart and love and everything, the idea of love and music and the train track being tied to the motif of Sayaka as the witch. And the idea that Kyoko threw the sticks into it. And the idea that they could be a ship. It's like this episode was just pure angst. Just angst and exposition. That's what this was. Angst and exposition. And it was so heartbreaking. And she's like, are you sure about this? And the part that I hate is that Madoka's like, well, I'm always trailing behind everybody else and I'm not useful for anything. I'm like, but you said you could come here and do this. And Kyoko's like, you're strange. Come on. Then we have the poster, and I love the idea, again, of the stage with the violinist in the center. It almost looks like it's burnt out on the sides, but it's just the spotlight fading into the blue and fading into the musical notes. Oh my God, it's awesome. I love it. And it's almost like it cuts off the head where the burnt part like transitions. And that's when she's like, am I coward for always leaving the fighting to others and never doing anything myself? And Kyoko's like, well, we told you not to become a magical girl. So, no, it's fine. It's okay. And she's like, and the thing that gets me is I'm like, Madoka isn't doing nothing. She's joining Kyoko to help her with this, to try to lure Sayaka's human side out. So she is doing something. And I would honestly savor the fact that you're human and not a magical girl that could possibly turn into a liability and into a witch. I don't think that's a bad thing, but she doesn't see it that way. And it's so frustrating because you can know why she doesn't see it that way. And she's like, you have a good life. Why would you just become a magical girl on a whim? Like, the only people who should do that are the ones left with no choice. The problem is, now that this monster's coming and Kyoko's dead, they literally, if she doesn't want Homura to die, there doesn't seem to be a choice left. I hate it. So then we get to this part right before she knows they're there. And it's like all of these mirrors, which her room was filled with mirrors. And in the mirrors, we see just images of her and all the other girls and everything, like images of them. But the moment they're heard, that's when, she knows we're here. I feel like Madoka was about to ask her why she made a wish and why she became a magical girl. And then it's like you're going into the depths of someone's soul. Oh my God, this felt like all of the seats, everything. It felt like something that was both from like Star Wars as well as Neon Genesis. It was terrifying. All the seats, all the violin playing, the orchestra, the conductor. Oh, I am in awe of the design of this world. It's so insane. And then you see Sayaka in her witch form, with the banners and the two swords, the suit of armor, the knight, the music and the swords playing in the heart and the big red bow and her heart getting stabbed by the sword. Oh my God, like her justice impaling her heart and her love. It's so terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. She's like, we're gonna do this like we planned. And just the shadows and everything. And she tried to, like, reach Sayaka. She's like, can you hear me? Oh, my God. And the witch just moving around like a conductor. Do you recognize my voice? And in that moment, she starts to, like, you see some stuff start to leak out of her, almost like tears. But then she gets mad and sends wheels flying towards her. And she's like, keep calling out. And so she sets up this barrier, and the barrier is to keep Madoka from getting hurt. And again, the barrier, it's like what she used back in episode 5 that she used against her. Yeah. And so Madoka keeps calling out while Kyoko uses the magic to try and reach her. But it's just not working. She keeps using the wheels to attack Kyoko. She's like, I want you to go back to your old self. And it's hard to watch Kyoko getting hurt. And she's like, you're being stubborn. And you just to see the maestro and everything. And then the idea, yeah, we start to see like all of this energy come from her and there's just more and more wheels. Yeah, it's just not going to work at this point. And I like that Kyoko went back to the conversation. She's like, oh, this is to pay me back from before. And you're doing it. Whether or not that was intended or not, it's how Kyoko, like, gets it justified. oh, I hate it. And she's like, keep calling out to Sayaka. And she tries again. But the thing about it is, Kyoko is pulling double duty. She not only has the barrier, keeping the wheels and stuff away from Madoka to protect her, but she's also fighting her at the same time. And then we have all of this shadow and everything. Oh. But it's just nothing that Madoka is saying is reaching her, which is what Homura warned her. She said it wasn't going to work. She was a lost cause. It's like, you finally got the chance to pay me back, huh? I guess we did try to kill each other at first. And then, poor Madoka. She's like, I thought you would be a wuss, but no matter how much I beat on you, you always got right back up. And then they showed them, like, mixing and blending, and I was like, I should have been shipping these guys a long time ago! I should have been shipping them a while ago! I was like, oh, well, how about this? I'm like, and then their little mixed spirits form a heart. I was like, I missed the boat on this one. I sure did miss the boat. Uh-oh. And she's like, you're mad, aren't you? Yeah, you can't accept what's going on, right? No, because she's a witch. Yep. And then it just swirls and swirls, and it becomes this heart that's like part of her cape. And she's like, I know how you feel. And then it like just spirals down and becomes the blood. Oh. And she's like, I know how you feel as a magical girl knowing that you're going to become a witch. Oh my God. Like the artistry in this shot. Come back to us when you feel better. Okay. Oh. I hate it. But yeah, but then it breaks. And I love that her like hair and everything is down. And she grabs Madoka, of course. Like she's going to kill her. And Madoka still pleads for her to stop. And I love how they draw Kyoko when she screams at her. And she like draws up and she manages to chop off the arm. And all this blue blood. And she's like, you said you believe this power could make people happy. Oh. But then there's all these wheels and everything still attacking her. Nope. It's just so frustrating. Because now she has the sword out. And poor Madoka is going to like crash through. They crash through the bottom. And then poor, oh my God. Like, yeah. So we see Kyoko has all the cuts and everything all around her. And like her sides like cut out. And she's crying. Oh, damn it. It sucks. No. And she says, please God. Because she's a preacher's daughter, right? Oh, you see the eye there? After all I've been through. Oh, she's like a mermaid. Oh, the bottom of it, that's what it is. A knight that's a mermaid. Oh, which makes sense with Sayaka, with Kyoko being the mermaid in that one point while she's talking to Madoka. That's how it ties together, the three fish and everything. She's a mermaid that's a knight. And that thing at the beginning, I was like, what is that developing? It's a tail and a fin. Which would go with the sea. Oh, and the ocean. Oh my God. Ah, shit. After all I've been through, I deserve a lucky break, even if it's this one time. I had not even thought about her being a mermaid. Oh my God. Well, yep. She's like, I need a lucky break. I can't believe that. They go into the second level under the orchestra. And then we see Kamajo there. But it almost looks like they're at the bottom there and Homura grabs Madoka. But it almost looked like Kamajo, like, is he at the center of Sayaka's heart? Or is that Sayaka holding the violin? I feel like that's Kamajo, right? With the hand. Is that supposed to be Kamajo? I think so. You just can't see him. And then Homura grabs her. And she looks over at Kyoko, who's, like, battered and bleeding. And she's like, are you dying? She's like, take care of her. I made her go along with my idiocy. Oh, and she won't let her go. She blocks her out. Ah, oh, damn it. You should never fight with a burden, right? That's the right choice. Just focus on the one thing you really want to protect and keep it safe till the end. Which is Homura trying to keep Madoka safe, but what's going to happen when Madoka wakes up and finds that Kyoko's dead? And then she's like, it's funny. At this time, that's what I thought I was doing. And the thing tying her hair together was like the pin that was her father's. Damn. And I like that she in that moment like prays, which just shows like what the facade that Kyoko had been putting on. And at the end, she finally accepts everything. Oh my gosh, she's like, I'll take care of her. Oh my god, why are these really good characters that I really like dying? Why? Show. Angst and exposition. That's what this episode was. And so she goes, she's like, don't worry, Sayaka. I know you don't want to be alone, and I'll be here with you. And then she, like, basically uses her soul gem to, like, blow up and kill both of them. Ugh. Damn it. Meanwhile, back at her apartment, we don't know what Madoka's reaction is, but we know back at her apartment, Kyubey shows up as she's looking at the data on the motherload of witches that's arriving. And Homura says, was there any chance for Sakura Kyoko to save Sayaka? And Kyubey's like, of course not. She should have known that it was impossible. And Homura's like, well, why didn't you stop her then? And he's like, well, I would have stopped her from needlessly sacrificing herself, of course. But then the creature that doesn't know deception, that doesn't know what deception is, says, well, I would have stopped her, but in this case, getting her out of the picture served an important purpose. Because now you can't face the monster alone. You have to have Madoka. And if this city is to be saved, Madoka has to become a magical girl. And Homura's like, that's not going to happen, I swear it. You little bitch! Son of a bitch, Kyubey. No! How dare you? How dare you? So yeah. Yeah. Then we get a different ED. That's just basically if you weren't shipping Sayaka and Kyoko by now, if you missed the boat, literally, like I did, until this moment, and then realized, oh, that's been a ship this whole time, then here's an ED to show you your folly. To show you how misguided you were, and being like, look, oh my god, it's just, it sucks so much. I try to find the courage to say goodbye, and then when I came to, I saw you from afar, crying all alone. Oh my god, and I want to link hands with you. Whatever the future may hold for us. Oh my god, this is a shipping song! Absolutely! I can't let go and merely think of it pains my heart. So now they're together in the afterlife, because the song says, here I am. They're together. She's like, girl, you were just with the wrong person, right? Damn. Damn. Feelings I leave behind will never falter. I can't believe that Kyoko and Sayaka are gone. We've lost 3 of our magical girls. Homura is left. If Madoka becomes a magical girl, how are we gonna keep Homura from dying and her becoming a witch? Because if she loses Homura and has nobody, then what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? This show. Like I said, I've got other series that I'm reacting to, and I always go in order. I do everything in order of the series, and I just go through equally, to be fair. But I can't guarantee that I'm going to get to the comments before episode 10. We'll have to wait and see. But, oh my god. Anyway, I'm excited to hear your comments down below. Please have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Don't take candy from strangers. Don't make magical contracts with demonic cat aliens that are just trying to use the energy from your pubescent life to fuel the universe. And I'll be back next time. with more from Puella Magi Madoka Magica. I'm not ready, y'all.